All right, fam, here we go. Today we're going to be doing a traditional Texas style brisket, and we're going to be doing it hot and fast. This was just a regular pack of brisket, about 12 pounds. I got it all trimmed up. We're going to be doing it backyard style since that's kind of my target audience. Now with backyard barbecue and doing a brisket, you don't necessarily have to trim it like it's done in restaurants or like it would be done in a competition. With a backyard brisket, it's typically done like for your family or family-sized group, so that means you want to keep as much of the meat on the brisket as you can. Now, as far as my rub, I'm using what we call here in Texas a Dalmatian rub, which is essentially crushed or cracked black pepper and kosher salt in a 50-50 mix. And then some choose to use a little more or less of the other. And then like some, I also often add a little bit of other dry seasoning for personality to kind of make it my own. And I'm also doing this brisket today fat side up. Now I'm still down with the slow and low, but what I found, like with a lot of things, with a little research, trial, and practice, you can become a little more efficient with your time and production. And so the last several briskets we've done hot and fast, they've actually turned out pretty good. Just go to my website and check out some of the reviews on my brisket. But I think we got it down to a science now for a consistently really good hot and fast brisket. So you really can do a good brisket almost half the time. Now let's pop this bad boy in the smoker. Now in doing up brisket hot and fast, you really want to try to keep your smoke chamber temperature between 375 and 400 degrees the first half of your cook. And that could be related to the size of your brisket or even your smoker. But with the last several hot and fast briskets I've done, 400 degrees seemed to be my sweet spot. You can see that we're already at 400 degrees. We're going to be rocking at 400 degrees at least for the next 2 hours, maybe 3 hours, since this was a 12-pound brisket. And I'm also using two thermometers. There's one on my smoke chamber, and then there's my digital thermometer. It looks like I got about a 15 to 20 degree variant, but it's okay. Could be my probe placement, but I know what's up. And something else you want to take note of on your smokestack, you really don't want a thick, billowing white smoke. You want a thin, bluish type smoke. Not really sure if you can see that. Otherwise, your meat may not be as savory, but it's still a eat, maybe not as savory. We're going to put a probe inside the meat here in just a second also. And the main reason I started to do my brisket like this, probe it for the entire cook, was so that I could monitor the internal temperature of the meat while at the same time keep my smoke chamber closed for a consistent cook heat. Because with a hot and fast brisket, you want to look for the internal temperature to reach and sustain a temperature between 185 and 200 degrees before even going to the next step and finishing it out. And for me, 200 degrees internal temperature has been the sweet spot. So we're going to let this bad boy roll for a good minute until it reaches 200 degrees, and I'll check back with you in a second. Yep. All right, it's been about an hour and a half since I put this 12-pound brisket on at 400. Had a little fluctuation in the temperature between 380 and 425, but that's still okay. Let's see what it's looking like about an hour and a half in. Yeah, fat is rendering pretty good. It's starting to color, nice mahogany color, so we're doing good. The internal temperature, I don't know if you can see that, but right now it's about 138 degrees, so maybe another hour. We ought to be there. All right, now we're about 3 hours in, and that bark is forming from that fat in my rub. And my internal temperature, I don't know if you can see that. Like we're hovering at about 180. So I'll give it another 45 minutes or so to get up to about 200. As I said, this was a larger brisket, about 12 pounds before I trimmed it. So we'll be back in just a minute, and I'll show you the second, third, or last part, whichever part it is. Right. So now here we are at the last part, and you basically want to just wrap your brisket. And if you're like me, you've probably seen and heard and have read different ways and how to wrap your brisket. Many swear by foil, others swear by butcher's paper. Now I've used foil on some slow and low briskets in times past, and they have produced me some pretty good moist briskets. But at the same time, I found that foil tends to cause almost a boiling effect sometimes, and then you can sometimes end up with like a brisket pot roast. But I ain't tripping. That could also be user error. But anyway, I prefer butcher's paper. I find that butcher's paper still provides the continued cooking process, but it also holds that bark tight and it doesn't cause your bark to get all mushy. So you just wrap it and you put it back in the smoker, then you let your smoker roll back to a typical brisket smoking temperature, slow and low temperature between 225 to 275. It's typically 250 for me, for the remaining duration of the cook. Then at this point, it's a matter of temperature, texture, and time is what I'd like to say, because you're going to be checking it periodically, and once that probe slides in through that meat and back out like butter, and your temperature is still where it needs to be, you're just about done, baby. And you can kind of gauge your time based on the brisket size, because with briskets, cook time is anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half per pound. So a 12-pound brisket, cooking it slow and low at 225 or 250 could give you about a 12 to 18-hour cook. So a hot and fast could potentially give you about a 6 to 9 hour cook for a 12-pound brisket, cutting that in half. And on this cook today, at this point, I'm in about 4 hours right now, so I'm expecting to be done in no more than another couple of hours, hopefully less. So all I'll be doing now is checking my internal temperature and texture. And my battery died on my digital thing, so I'm gonna have to use my handheld digital probe. Oh yeah, also on this last part here, just before the brisket is wrapped, whether it's wrapped in foil or butcher's paper, a lot of backyard grill masters choose to get a little fancy right here. Add a little extra kick. They usually pour in a little beef tallow, their favorite beverage, a soda, beer, some kind of saucy, sassy liquid mixture. But since this is a backyard style, Texas style brisket, I'm just gonna let the Dalmatian rub and the rendered fat from the brisket itself do the dang thing. And then I'll come back and show you what it looks like at the end. All right, there it is. And you probably can already see some of the juice on the bottom of this butcher paper. Now let's do one other thing. Let's do the hang test. Let's see how it's hanging. No, not how it's hanging, but you know what I'm saying. Look at that. Here, come pull that. Put your hand in there and just see if that pulls apart pretty easy. Real quick, I'm recording. Just pull it. Yeah, she just snatched it, but see that? Yeah, that's good. That's a hot and fast brisket there. And even has a little bit of smoke ring. What I've learned that sometimes you don't have to have a smoke ring with hot and fast, especially if you do fat side up, because of how the convection works with an offset smoker. But that's other stuff for another time. Anyway, turned out pretty good.